All right, I'm going to record this because there's a lot of people that told me they couldn't make the first one. I'm actually going to record all of these sessions, so in the event that you missed one, you can't make it, you're running late, whatever, these will all be available online. The way these review sessions work, the purpose is not for you to endure a second lecture, because the reason that most of you are here is either A, you really want to do well in the test, or B, you really want to do well in the test and you feel like this particular topic wasn't one of your strong suits. Given that we teach you a lot of the information through lecture, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you stop and think about it for us to just give you another lecture. It's kind of counterintuitive. So what this is supposed to be is a conversation. You tell us what you think you know. We feed off of each other's collective knowledge, and if there's something that has pretty much everybody stumped, then we'll engage in kind of a mini lecture. The way we're going to start all of these sessions, and the reason why it's so important for you guys to show up more or less at 8 o'clock, is we're always going to dedicate the first 10 minutes or so to you seeing how much you remember. Now, you'll notice that on the review sheet, there's a blank side, and then there's a side that's filled in. So what I would love for you guys to get in the habit of doing when you come in is not even look at the back side, not even look at the filled in side. Start on the blank side and see what you know. See what you remember. Pick a time period, pick a topic. Don't be afraid to be wrong because you got the correct answers on the back side. This is for you to gauge just how thoroughly or not you remember the things about China or India or the Abbasids or whatever topic we're doing that day. Now, to spare you the suspense, what happens pretty much every year I've ever done this is we get through the first couple sessions, everybody's really good about showing up at 8 and spending about 10 minutes working on the blank side of the sheet, and then by week 2 or 3, they start to roll in like 8:10, 8:15, 8:20. They're like, I just want to show up for the information. This is a waste of my time. It's really not. It's not a waste of your time. See, because in teacher school, they taught me that you guys learn best when we do more than just have us talk to you or talk at you. You learn best when you are doing something as well. So this part, this first 10 or 15 minutes, is what hooks this knowledge into your brains. This is probably the most important part. And for the people at home watching this, this means you too. Pause the tape, do it for 10 minutes, then come back. So, it's 8:03. At 8:10, because we won't count my talking time, at 8:10 we'll get started with the conversation. So for right now, take the next 7 minutes and crank out the blank side of that chart. See what you know. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. You can't be punished for this. It's simply for you to see what you know. Right. All right, kids. So how did we feel after that 10-minute-ish work session? Do you feel like, all right, let me ask you this. How many of you feel like you knew more than you thought you did? Okay, and that's good. And you're going to find that that happens in a few of these sessions. There's going to be some that for whatever reason, it just sunk in. And as you start to fill out the chart, you're going to find, oh, wow, I do kind of know this. That's part of why we do this, because it gives you a nice morale booster. And you start to feel better, like, wow, I really do know some of this stuff. I haven't wasted the whole year. I'm going to be okay. Like, that's why we do this. How many of you, as you looked at this chart, felt totally overwhelmed, didn't even know where to start, kind of sat there just staring, filled in a couple of boxes, and generally felt stupid? Okay, look around. You are not alone, which is the other reason why we do this. A lot of you guys are going to walk in and just kind of psychologically, you're going to be like, I'm never going to pass this. I don't even know why I'm showing up here. Everybody else is so much smarter than me. They're all going to do well. I'm going to fail. I'm going to be the only one on Twitter in July going, hey, how did everybody else do? They're like, oh, we all passed. You're like, yay, me too. I need you all to realize that you are all in the same boat. And I think you do end up knowing more than you give yourself credit for. And so that's what we're going to try to accomplish in this last half hour. Now, again, quick show of hands. How many of you, based on what you did think you know, think you need the most help with government? And you can raise your hand to multiples, like your top 3. Need help with government, okay? Need help with China and economics, trade, things like that. Okay? China and religion and or philosophical beliefs. Okay, China and gender roles. Okay, China and important people. Okay, we have our winner. That's where we're going to start then. So again, people listening at home, this is why you want to be here. Otherwise, you don't get to have your input. Okay, so we're going to start with people of significance. Bye, Stephen. People of significance in China in the Foundations era. Who do we like the most? Who do we find to be the most important that doesn't slam doors on us? Who do we like? Shi Huangdi. Okay. Wow, that's really big. Right. Now, this is where you can make this sheet work for you however you want. It's really tough to come up with a one-size-fits-all approach to exam review. So if you don't want to use this at all and you want to use your own note sheet like Ever's doing, that's awesome. If you want to draw lines and arrows and things like that, that's why we have the note section at the bottom. It's your world. Make of it what you will. But one of the things you might want to do is provide a short notation for why these people are important, especially if you don't remember. Because otherwise, half an hour from now, all you're going to end up with is a list of important people, and you're going to have no clue what they did. So why do we care about Shi Huangdi? Yes, sir. Invented legalism. And legalism does what for China? All right. Helps to unify under the leadership of who? Shi Huangdi. Right. And so it's a very autocratic system of belief. It's the belief that the government is pretty much always right. And the government can pretty much always do whatever it wants to do. We're going to see it used off and on throughout China's history. What's Shi Huangdi's other big claim to fame? I guess there's two more. Yeah. Okay. So, expansion of the Great Wall. Used to do what? Right. Keep out the Huns, yeah. Which dynasty? Qin dynasty. Very good. QIN. And then the last one, which is just fun to talk about because it's so psychotic and narcissistic. Big army. Terracotta army. Okay, anything else we want to talk about with Shi Huangdi? That's a pretty good start, and we don't want to belabor the point with any of these guys because we have a lot of Chinese people to talk about right now. All right, other than Shi Huangdi, who else do we like in the Foundations era? Yes, sir. Confucius. And why do we need to talk about Confucius? I like calling different people because this helps you get engaged too. Ever? Good. Creates Confucianism. And what's the big thing with Confucianism? Why is it important, Alana? Good. It's kind of the backbone of Chinese culture for most of China's history. Yes, ma'am. Very good. Filial piety. How many relationships? 5 relationships. All right. Lays out the rules for society's interaction. How you're supposed to treat the people above you, how you're supposed to treat the people below you. Establishes who is above you and below you. And ultimately, who's at the top? The emperor. All right, so again, we're trying to find a way to keep society under control, and we now have 2 different philosophies created by 2 different men, Shi Huangdi and Confucius, that all essentially do the same thing, keep society organized, but go about it in very, very different ways. All right, who else do we want to know in the Foundations era? Very good. Isn't that Lao Tzu? Isn't that Lao Tzu? Yeah. All right. Was it TZI? I can never remember. All right. So I think the guy you're talking about, Lao Tzu, this will give us our third Chinese philosophy. Lao Tzu creates Taoism. The most spiritual of the three of China's philosophical systems. This one does promote a belief in, to an extent, the supernatural, natural spirits. Not necessarily an organized priest class or hierarchy or anything like that, but does promote a belief in something outside of the human experience. Nice. Okay, yeah, that works. Never had an assistant before. This is great. What's happening here? There we go. Hi. Grab a sheet. Come on in. Okay. Anybody else we want to talk about? Yes, ma'am. Who's Wu Ti? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Bueller? What's that? I gotta be honest, I don't remember, so somebody's gonna have to look it up. Could be. I honestly don't remember. Starts the Han Dynasty. All right, we have a winner. Or you can keep looking if you want to, just for your own benefit. But Wu Ti begins the Han Dynasty, which is the greatest of the Foundations era dynasties. The Han Dynasty is going to be the pinnacle of classical Chinese civilization, and Wu Ti is given credit for starting. Nice job, Ever. See, here's your motivation to do well in the mornings. You get shout-outs in the videos. Live in the dream. Live in the dream. Okay, anybody else we want to talk about in Foundations era? Okay, so if we go to the Postclassical era then, and by the way, if you don't know the dates for the breakdowns of these time periods, they are up at the top of the sheet. These are dates that you need to know. We don't stress a lot of individual dates for events and things like that throughout the year, but you need to know the breakdowns of the eras backwards and forwards, as well as some of the events that mark the beginning and the end. All right, so who do we like in the Postclassical era? Please, please don't all speak at once. Okay, this is where you can always cheat and feel smart and just read one of the names that we gave you. That'll keep the conversation going. Yes. Empress Wu. Nice. Good pull. All right, what do we know about Empress Wu? Wonderful. She wanted to make Buddhism the national religion in China, replacing what? Confucianism. How does that work out? Not so great in terms of accomplishing her ultimate goal, but what does happen with Buddhism in China? Good. It gets a foothold and it does start pushing back against Confucianism. And so the story for large chunks of the post-classical age is going to be the rivalry between the Buddhist establishment and the Confucian scholar gentry. And you will see succeeding emperors and empresses kind of taking that struggle back and forth, promoting one over the other. Confucianism will always be the most dominant, especially, excuse me, in terms of affecting society's organization. But you will see Buddhism exert considerable influence for one specific reason. Anybody know why? What does Buddhism offer that Confucianism doesn't?
For the people lower on the hierarchy system, it allows them to actually have some say in the religion instead of being overruled
Okay, yeah, it does allow for a little bit more individual interaction rather than just, oh, everybody is above me, my life sucks, I guess I'll just do whatever everybody else tells me. But what else does Buddhism offer that Confucianism doesn't? Spirituality. Again, that idea of something greater than yourself, a purpose to life beyond just living out this life. All right, who else do we like? Wendy. Not from Peter Pan. I apologize. For those of you that don't have me on a regular basis, just to give you fair warning, my jokes are bad. You can ask my students. Okay, well, we can compete then. All right, what do we know about Wendy? I love the blank stares. You're like, we got out of bed early for this. Come on, just tell us. This is why we put you in a room that has textbooks. Say it again. Show me. Oh. Okay, Zhao family, Sui dynasty. But that's good. Good get. All right, so Wendy starts what dynasty? Sui. Good. This is the two-man dynasty, the father-son duo. This is where we begin to see some of that stereotypical cyclical development of the Chinese dynasties. They always start with the best of intentions. They always start with the desire to clean up the problems from the previous generation, to reduce corruption, to make the bureaucracy more effective, to not have the emperors be so focused on lavish lifestyles. Wendy starts it off with the best of intentions, lowers taxes, treats the peasants better, takes care of their, foreign diplomacy issues. And then his son, whose name is Yang Di, goes and does what? Murders him, which is always a good start. And then good. Yang Di goes and brings it all back. All the corruption, all the inefficiency, all the bureaucratic nonsense. Your book talks about, my kids will probably remember this, I don't know if anybody else's will. He's the guy that orders the peasants to dig up a forest and then replant the trees closer to his palace so he can go hunting without having to travel quite so far away. That was his use of government taxes. He also builds the Grand Canal, which in the end ends up being a good thing. But when you think about how long and how much money it takes to dig a ditch connecting the two main rivers in China, it's a lot of money and a lot of time. So they are a beautiful back-to-back snapshot of most of China's dynasties. Best of intentions at the beginning, eventually leading to inefficiency, corruption, and the bureaucratic nonsense that we see time and 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 time again. Who else do we want to talk about or need to talk about in this time period? I can think of one other fairly important guy who does not appear on your chart, which is a grievous oversight on my part. It has something to do with boats. It's that guy, yeah. Zheng He, nice. What's Zheng He do? Treasure junks. He's the admiral in charge of the Chinese fleet that is ordered to sail around a good chunk of the Eastern world. Leaving from China, sailing down around the southeast Asian Peninsula, around Vietnam and Thailand and all that. Sailing back up then along the coast, around India, sailing as far to the west as Mecca, and then down the east coast of Africa, all the way down to Zanzibar. Allegedly, maybe even might have stopped off in Australia on his way back before coming back home. Sailing on these massive ships powered by 7, 8 different masts full of sails, large enough to carry hundreds of men on each ship. And on his voyage, he takes 2,000 some odd ships, at least a dozen of which were treasure junks. Each of those treasure junks are so big that underneath in the storage compartments there was so much space that a giraffe could walk around standing up. How do we know that? Because he brought one back. And he dropped it off in the emperor's palace. Everybody was trying to figure out what it was. Like, is that a horse? I don't know. We've never seen one. Uh-huh. But more than all of that, why do we remember Zheng He? What was the response to Zheng He when he comes back and he parks his boat? Hannah?
He got cut like their budget.
Right. He got cut. He got fired. Donald Trump style. He was told his services were no longer necessary, and the Chinese government instead wanted to use the funds for what? Invading Korea, Manchuria, kicking back the Mongols, keeping them out. And so Zheng He was kind of the Christopher Columbus of China, except unlike Columbus, who got 4 attempts, Zheng He gets 1 and then he gets fired, and China ceases exploration from that point on. Speaking of, now that we've said that about the Mongols, who else should we probably throw in here in the post-classical age? Who's the Mongol that rules China? Don't say Genghis. Or Chengiz for that matter. Kublai. There we go. And what dynasty does he oversee? The Yuan. Very good. Mongol dynasty with a Chinese sounding name. That makes everybody feel all warm and cozy inside. All right, we're going to take a quick pause here on the important people, and we're going to jump back. So I know you guys had some questions about some of the other topics. So, real quick, with regard to government, and here you can just flip over and look at the completed side and see if that jogs your memory on anything. What we see in China is they start out regionally pretty much like everybody else does as an early civilization, but China, for whatever reason, quickly becomes centralized under the leadership of emperors. We gave you all the dynasties up there at the top right of your sheet. Like you guys already mentioned, Confucianism is what serves as the building block of Chinese society. It's what keeps them organized. It's what keeps the peace, keeps people obedient to the emperor. All good things from a civilization standpoint. And the creation of the Chinese bureaucracy. And how do you get into the bureaucracy? You have 2 options. The easier way is what? Right, birth. What's the harder way? Right, the examination, the civil service exam. And then as we transition into the post-classical, we have the fall of China, just like all the other classical civilizations. And after they recover from their fall and they come back, what sort of government reemerges in China? What sort of government comes right back?
Bureaucracy.
Good. A bureaucracy with who's in charge? An emperor. Good. And what gives the emperor his authority? Mandate of heaven. So about 20 minutes in, do some of you feel like some of these things are now starting to come back a little bit? Shaking the rust off? Does anybody still feel totally, hopelessly lost? It's okay to be honest. Okay, see, this is good. We're making progress. All right. If we look at, we can kind of deal with culture and foreign contacts all at the same time, especially in the Foundations era. What do we know about China culturally in the Foundations era? Do they get exposed to lots and lots of ideas? No. What happens? They're very isolated. Good. So what we know about China then is that they develop in isolation. So very culturally independent, very prone to creating their own initiatives, their own ideas. And this is in large part what keeps them together, is that they don't have any sort of significant external threat or external cultural influence that can separate people or fragment them or give them lots and lots of options to choose from. So when we look at foreign contacts, is there anyone influencing China in the Foundations era? And don't say no, because I know no is the easy answer. Who does show up? India a little bit, especially as we get into the classical age. Who else? Right, the Huns. Good. Those foreign nomadic invaders that are so pesky and end up crushing all of the classical civilizations in some way, shape, or form. And just because it's fun to talk about, what about treatment of women and merchants? What do we know?
Well, since they were very isolated, merchants really didn't have a place in society because they didn't have anyone to trade with.
Okay, good. Why else are merchants not really looked upon terribly favorably? Eileen? Right. It's basic sales. You sell something for more than it's worth, and that's how you make money. But why is that a problem specifically in China? What does that violate? Confucianism. Kind of goes against that whole 5 relationships where you're supposed to treat people with respect and dignity and honor. Because if you're lying to them, that's not terribly respectful. Yeah. That's a really good question, and here's the dilemma that the Chinese have with their merchants, especially as they develop and you get into the classical age and then the post-classical age where trade just blows up. You need them. You need them. Society will not function without them because it's through the merchants that you get the delivery not only of luxury goods, but foreign goods. And even just the delivery of food from one region to another. Your nation does not survive without merchants. But much like the people that collect the trash, we don't necessarily look at them and envy them. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm guessing most people did not grow up going, Mommy, Daddy, when I grow up, I want to be a trash collector. True statement? No? That's kind of the position that the Chinese merchants find themselves thrust into. They're providing an incredibly valuable service, and some of them become fairly wealthy doing it. Not like trash collectors. But it's never going to be that culturally acceptable position. They will never become famous. They will never receive notoriety for it. They will provide a valuable service, but they will typically be looked down upon for providing that service because it seems inherently dishonest. All right, what about women? Is it even worth saying patriarchal society? Have we ever learned about a place that was not a patriarchal society? Sort of? Where? All right, so other than that, it's just kind of a given that most places have a patriarchal society. So unless you have nothing else to say on a topic involving the status of women, please shy away from patriarchal society. It's just going to take you in the wrong direction, because most every place that we studied is in some way, shape, or form a patriarchal society. So what's important to say about women in Foundations era China? Eileen? All right. So not only is it patriarchal, but it's patriarchal specifically because of Confucianism and its 5 relationships that specifically place women in a lower setting. Where do women have influence or power or authority? In the household. Now, that will change later as we get to Neo-Confucianism in the post-classical age. But it's kind of one of those, the man does the work and he's in charge. Outside of the home, when he comes home, it's his wife's home. And yes, he is the husband, but it's almost her house. We're going to see that change from time to time and from place to place. But in Foundations era China, that's kind of the limits on her influence. But she is quite influential in that place, yeah. Well, and especially if you can be the wife of the emperor and then be fortunate enough to have the emperor die before you, that puts you in a very strong position, yeah. All right. Now, I also hope you guys realize that this is the problem with trying to deal with an entire civilization throughout all of history. We have about 10 minutes left, and we've barely gotten out of the we haven't gotten out of the post-classical age. So again, this is where you guys help direct the conversation. What do you need to know? And we can play Battleship on this one if you want. I mean, pick a row, pick a column, ask a question. Yes, ma'am. So you want to know who these people are and what they did?
Yeah.
Okay. So persons of significance in the present era. We give you 3 on the sheet. Chiang Kai-shek, Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping. There's probably a 4th we can put down, Sun Yat-sen. Some of you are looking at me like I'm not even speaking English. Surprise, not. Present era China is largely focused on the fight between the communists and the nationalists. Who is the leader of the nationalist group, the Kuomintang? It's one of the 3 names we just threw out. Chiang Kai-shek. Who's the leader of the communist group? Mao Zedong. Good. Again, if you're not writing additional notes or things like this on your chart or on a separate page, you should, because otherwise this just becomes a useless list of names. Chiang Kai-shek equals nationalists. Mao Zedong equals communists. That is a very, very fundamental piece of knowledge you need to have for China in the present era. So you're going to have this conflict between the 2 groups to determine the future of China. Who is going to win? Good. Mao and the communists. Which is the reason why China continues to be communist to this day. What happens to Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists? Taiwan. They get kicked off the island. Or they get kicked off to the island, I guess. It's like reverse Survivor. Told you, it's bad. Bad. Uh-huh.
Well, Chiang Kai-shek is going to be, we talk about Mao and the nationalists, Mao versus the nationalists before we get to World War II. However, this is going on while World War II is going on. Okay? So this is one of those problems with the book. You know, we think if it's chapters and chapters and chapters, it's one after the other, right? But it's not. It's happening at the same time. Okay? So Chiang Kai-shek, Mao Zedong, happening at the same time. Frank.
What year did World War II start?
It officially starts in 1939. But Japan attacks China in 1931. Or no, attacked Manchuria in 1931. Okay, so China knows, Chiang Kai-shek knows, he is in charge of China at this point. He knows that that Japan is making its move, right? They don't go to the mainland just to say hi. All right, see, I'm just as good.
Mm-hmm.
And so the nationalists are gearing up, but they've also got what's going on in the rest of the world. So that part, the Asian part of World War II, is going to be that relationship between the communists and the nationalists and Japan. Okay? Who is the stronger of the three at this point in history? Japan. Yes?
Did they have the communists and nationalists have to like group up together and like work against the Japanese? Did that happen? I thought that did. Like they allied or something?
Kind of.
Well, the Soviets are going to help. America is going to help. But it's a muddy mess. It's a mess at this time frame. And it's complicated. But because of the placement in the book, I just want to make sure you don't think that Chiang Kai-shek has already gone to Taiwan and then World War II starts. Because that's not the way it happened. Okay?
Did they talk about it in the
Yes, they will talk about it.
And some of what happens with these two groups is it's a matter of geography.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens in almost every communist conflict that we're going to talk about, conveniently, China, Korea, Vietnam, the Chinese always seem to be in the north for some reason. And that means they almost always are the ones that have to engage in warfare before everybody else does. Same thing happens in Vietnam. And so the communists in China are having to fight the Japanese long before the nationalists are. So to your question about didn't they work together and fight together? Kind of, but the communists are carrying the brunt of the burden, which is why the Chinese people, and the same thing happens in Vietnam, tend to like the communists more because they see them being the good guys, being the heroes, going to fight for them. And the nationalists kind of like, we're just going to sit back and watch and see what happens because we don't like you and we don't like them, so hey, this is good.
But since Japan is over to Manchuria, where's Manchuria located? In the north, North Korea, right? Going into China. And so you've got the communist stronghold in the north, so they encounter who first? Who went into Manchuria? Japan. So Japan meets them first. And then like Mr. Ackerman was saying, the nationalists are like, let them figure it out, let them kill each other off, and then we'll come in and pick up the pieces, everybody love us. Yay! It doesn't happen like that. And that's why the Soviets are helping. That's why the United States is over there, because they don't want to lose. And then you get into World War II, and it's crazy. But World War II in Asia starts boiling in 31, not 39.
And as you guys try to review all of this, and especially as we get into the modern era and the present era, and if you guys ever reach the point where you have to go, you're welcome to get up and quietly leave, and if you want to stay until the bitter end, you're welcome to do that. One of the other ways to study this, and again, it's probably not just enough to show up to these sessions each morning and hope that we tell you enough and that it all sticks a month from now. Up at the top of that sheet, you'll notice we give you a incredibly brief timeline. And we also give you the chapters that this information is taken from. One of the things you might want to do as a form of studying is to go to those chapters and go to the timeline inside the first page of each chapter, which I know most of you gleefully skip over because there's no text to read there, just like you do with the maps and the pictures. You're like, awesome, half page. Yes. Yeah, I know. It's not a secret. You may want to go back to these timelines and construct a study tool chronologically by going through these dates and these kind of mini summaries of events. That's also a good way to jog your memory on content, on people, on conflicts, on developments. That is a very effective way of studying rather than just going back and rereading. Just like we started this morning, if you can do something Fill in a blank chart. Talk to people about things you think you remember. Break down the information and reorganize it in a different way. All of those things are much more effective than sitting here being fairly tired because it's early and listening to us talk at you, which is why we're trying to not do that so much. So if this wasn't what you were hoping for, I apologize, but I'm not really very sorry, because this way works better. If you just want to listen to something, and I know many of you do this, go back and listen to the lectures that I've posted for each of these chapters. I'm assuming you don't have that much time to waste, though. And your time is really going to be better spent doing something rather than listening to something. So thank you guys for coming. We're going to do India on Thursday.